how legal is crypto in India now?
There are these various open source protocols on which the government is trying to position itself. And this is actually a geopolitical move. Crypto has a PR problem in India. So even though it's become a lot better from earlier, so any use case, any product that is based on this premise will come outside the definition. You will not have to deal with all the tax laws that apply with regard to virtual digital assets. Money used to travel at the pace of a human hand, but now it travels at the pace of light. You'll automatically be able to know this blockchain good, this blockchain bad. Crypto today still hasn't solved this interface problem. America says, boss, private enterprise, full fatte, you please go do what you have to do. EU says that we have to protect the rights of our citizens.
How is India in this situation?
The third one is
How
China.
about China?
Like, my country, my rules. And I will control my citizen. Everything belongs to me. Fourth view of how to regulate is coming from India. Open sourced, open API ecosystem that is built by the government.
Please subscribe to this channel. It's free for you and it helps us in many ways. We'll keep striving to bring more value through these conversations. Cheers.
Welcome back to another episode of Rocklaz Radio. On today's show, we have with us India's best Web3 lawyer, and we are going to talk about, is Web3 over? Was it a bubble? Or what are government planning? What is the future and scope after the hype has gone? What are the future potential in Web3? And much more from the legal and government's point of view. And joining us is Advocate Dhrupad Das. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tanmay. It's a pleasure.
First question. What's the difference between advocate and lawyer?
Well, an advocate is somebody who is regulated by the Advocates Act, which means that he has cleared his bar exams and he's passed out of a law school, cleared his bar exams, and has applied to the Bar Council of India and received a license to practice before the courts of India. He's an advocate. If you've just passed your law and you choose to practice in-house or in some other role that is not licensed, then you are just a lawyer. So every advocate is a lawyer, but every lawyer need not be an advocate.
Oh, so a lawyer doesn't have a law license.
I mean, an advocate who's a lawyer will have a law license, but a lawyer need not necessarily have a license.
Okay.
Technically, if you are...
yeah. So advocate is the right way to address somebody who has cleared the bar. Okay. Me and Dhrupad have been together since we have seen the 2021, 22, 23 of Web3, blockchain, NFTs, and crypto. So we want to get back to what has happened over there and how are we progressing now. In this podcast itself, if you have seen the previous episode where Ishan was talking about how government was implementing it in Tamil Nadu, and his friend from the US was talking about the US situation. Let's find out what is the situation of law related to Web3 in today's India. How is it? Dhrupad, what is the situation of Web3 law in India?
So situation in Web3 law is a lot better. I would say exponentially better than it was when I joined this community. That was in 2015-16. And at that point of time, there was no law. I think there was negative laws in the sense people thought it was a scam and it was not to be touched with the 10-pole. There were circulars saying, please don't interact with it. We are that close to banning it. So it was a bad time to be in this space. But now a lot of positive laws have come. Recognition of its value to the economy has come. So for that, I think a lot of concerted effort is taking place through the various government ministries who are trying to ensure that India can fully leverage this revolution that's coming.
So how legal is crypto in India now?
See, crypto never became illegal. Doing illegal things with crypto has always been illegal. Just like money is legal, but doing illegal things with money is illegal. So that's the situation. There was a bit of confusion in the middle where the RBI prevented its banks. So all the banks and financial institutions, as you may know, is regulated by the RBI. So the RBI told all its regulated entities that you will not touch crypto and you will not provide your services to entities that are dealing in crypto. So that was a bit, that's called a ring fencing. So they, made a ring around all the regulated entities. And that led to a situation where it appeared like crypto was banned, but that never actually happened. So today people can buy and sell. You just have to pay your taxes and make sure that it's accounted for. That's about it.
What is the tax situation as per
So
today?
tax situation is a bit of a mixed bag. So firstly, when the tax laws came, there was a big rallying cry saying that at least now it's being regulated, because tax was the first way of cryptocurrencies getting regulated. And I'm going to use certain terms: cryptocurrencies, tokens, digital assets, right? These are all kind of the same thing, even though technically in law they may have different connotations. So since we're talking about tax actually makes a distinction between what is a virtual digital asset and what is not. So for example, you may own, let's say, this painting behind me. If this painting is being sold through an NFT, where I said, Tanmay, you buy this NFT and I'll sell you this painting, it'll remain a NFT, it'll remain a crypto token, but it will not be a virtual digital asset for tax purposes. So you're completely outside the net, right? But the same painting, if it has been made on an iPad and sold as a digital piece of art, that gets tagged as a virtual digital asset and 30% tax applies. So there's kind of a differential treatment on the activities that you do using tokens, and depending on the activity, you get taxed. So today there's a blanket tax of almost 30% on all transactions. 1% TDS has to be deposited, which is horrible for, let's say, algorithmic traders or high frequency traders. And it has also kind of had a very dampening effect on the economy as a whole. At least the crypto economy within India, it has had a dampening effect. And my view is that this effect is intended. The government did want to ensure that this space is, in a sense, regulated. They were basically regulating by putting a speed breaker because they thought it was moving too fast and too many scams were happening, and that was kind of a negative view. I call it a PR problem. Crypto has a PR problem in India. So even though it's become a lot better from earlier, but the problem still subsists. But one thing, Tanmay, that I want to add, I mean, the government has also left a big window open for a variety of tokens that they say will not come within the definition of a virtual digital asset. Like I just mentioned, tokens backed by physical assets. Similarly, if you're using tokens for community building, if you're using tokens for marketing, if you're using tokens for goods and services. So there's a lot of exceptions that has been carved out that gives any creator, founder, a design space within which to operate that is completely clear. So we have clarity on what is accepted, not on what all is included.
Can we go deeper on what is accepted, like with every example, and what is the scope with that?
Absolutely. So first is, if you are tokenizing a real world asset, that's condition one. And that real world asset should be backed by a contract that is enforceable in law. That's basically what the statute kind of says. And what that means is that if I say that you buy this NFT, and the NFT will mean I will give you a mic or a something tangible, a physical object, and you will become a owner of that object, then that is outside the definition. So any use case, any product that is based on this premise will come outside the definition. You will not have to deal with all the tax laws that apply with regard to virtual digital assets.
But you said you need a contract for that, legal binding contract. So if you have a government legal contract for that, why do you need an NFT? Why do you need the contract to be digital?
Okay. So then you are going deeper into what is an NFT question. Okay. You're going deeper into that question because see, an NFT, and I'm oversimplifying over here, but NFT is like let's call it a pen drive. Okay. An NFT is like a pen drive. It's a very, very smart, extremely sophisticated pen drive, because in that pen drive, you can put any data file you want, any set of data files, and you can today now even program that pen drive to do various things, which means that if I put this pen drive into my computer, digitally sign this document. That is a functionality we actually have with digital signatures today, right? So the pen drive itself does not get regulated. What you do with the pen drive gets regulated. So which means that an NFT, I can mint an NFT anywhere on any platform today, theoretically, right? I mean, literally and theoretically. But now how I sell the NFT is already a transaction. So you cannot get away with what a transaction or an agreement is. So if I say, Tanmay, let's say you and I have a phone call. Let's take this example behind me. Okay. And that painting behind me is a Jamini Roy painting. So it's a national treasure, very expensive, supposed to have value. So let's say I am selling this.
As you mentioned the title, now you'll have to pull down the painting and show us because it's only half visible.
Can I pull up the mic and show you the camera?
Okay.
Let me try that instead. So that is the painting. It's from a Shiva dancing series.
Oh,
and
wow.
Jamini Roy was a famous old school painter. And it was gifted to my family when he came and stayed with us, I think in the 70s or 60s, sometime back in the day.
Wow.
So it has now come to me.
Treasure.
Yeah, inheritance. So these things are very difficult to buy now. So anyway, so let's take an example where I tell you, now let's say after this podcast, Tanmay, you call me and say, I really love that painting. Please send it to me. And I say, yeah, I'll send it to you through an NFT, right? Which means that I've minted an NFT, I've scanned the physical, painting, and I have listed it on a portal, let's say OpenSea. And in OpenSea, I say that, whoever buys this NFT for X amount of rupees or whatever, X amount of Ether, I promise to send you this send you this painting to your house, for which you will give me your address. Now that itself is a contract, right? So the very act of making a purchase is a contract that you've entered in. And the contract will always have a few more conditions. Like if I bought the painting, where will I take delivery of the painting? Right? What happens if the painting gets destroyed on the way? Whose liability is that going to be? Do I refund your Ether? Right? So these conditions will have to be built into any transaction. If you don't, you're going to have a dispute, basically. But the fact is you've got into a contract. Now, how many clauses your contract has is up to you and the buyer and the seller to kind of, figure out. So you can't actually have a NFT transaction without a contract. Now, whether you put it in writing or whether that contract is dumbed down and put in a smart contract is a different, these are all options, right? So the smart contract can regulate a transaction as well, which is what people are doing today.
So the smart contract is also a contract. You don't need like a stamp paper contract.
No. So what happens is that you have the stamp pack. Okay. And the stamp pack regulates, it has a list of contracts. It says if you're getting into these kind of agreements, then you need to pay stamp duty. That's the stamp paper you buy. So if you're buying a house, you can't buy a house over a smart contract, right? Unless and until there's a provision in that smart contract to make sure that stamp duty is paid to the government. Get it? So the contracts, but there'll be this, but there's an entire ecosystem of contracts that don't need stamp papers. Your low value contracts and stuff, they usually don't. So only those contracts that are mentioned need stamp papers. Others don't. So if you're transacting,
low value, is there a fixed figure?
No. It's not a fixed figure. It's keep in mind. So this is like a overarching statement that can, be part of this discussion. And if there's one thing you take away from this conversation is that law regulates activities. Okay. So what is the activity of that contract will get regulated. So that if the activity of that contract is to sell land, regulated. If the activity of that contract is to sell an NFT, not regulated. Value does not matter. So the activity, so the government has a list of activities. If you are dealing in these activities, the contracts related to that, please pay us some money. That's what it says.
So instead of low value, we can say non-mainstream activities.
Non-regulated. Non-regulated. Because technically that's a regulation. As a lawyer, I'm like, that's the regulation that applies.
Okay. So art is non-regulated.
Art is not yet regulated, yes.
What else is not regulated that can be NFTs?
Well, so see, most things that intuitively you think is not required, that don't require you to, like buying of goods and service, especially if they're not immovable property, you're pretty much in the clear, right? And each state will have its own list. So it's always better that when you're getting into a transaction to call a lawyer like myself and say, boss, this is what I intend to do. Do I need to look? I will look at that book and say, yeah, you're in the clear. Please go ahead. Right? Or I may say something as silly as you need to have 1 rupee stamp paper. Correct? But if you don't have stamp paper, then at the end of the day, the effect of that is that when you go to enforce that contract, in case two parties breach it, then the court is going to make you pay a penalty. The contract doesn't become invalid, but it becomes unenforceable. There's a distinction there.
So, verbal also can be a contract. I mean, I learned this in my mercantile
Pardon me?
law.
What can be a
Verbal contract also can
oral
be a
contracts?
contract.
Yes.
Oral,
You can have an
oral.
oral contract. Absolutely. There are certain things that have to be reduced in writing. Again, sale of immovable property cannot take place orally. Intellectual property cannot be. So usually when it comes to properties, right, something that you have a right over, that you will need to have a written contract somewhere. And oral contracts are also notoriously difficult to enforce, unless and until you have some proof of you actually saying it and the other person responding to it saying that yes, and here is the proof of the handshake. The courts will have a tough time believing you over the other person. Then it's a he said, she said.
So, if a contract is not enforceable, you just pay the stamp duty and it becomes enforceable.
Yeah, that is the usual.
Okay.
It's usually a 10%, so it's very, very heavy
10% of the whole value.
of the stamp duty that you would have had to pay.
Okay. 10% of the stamp duty.
Oh, sorry,
you would have had
10
to
times,
pay.
10 times, 10 times, 10 times.
That's what I
1000%.
said. That is so come ho gaya.
Sorry, 1000%. 10 times,
Okay.
not percent.
Okay. 10 times of the actual stamp duty. All right. So that's how you need lawyers, guys.
Like
So,
I'll give you
a high value asset.
No, and I'll give you a simple example. It gets a little nuance there also. For example, if you're entering into a lease agreement, I'm sure you may be living on rent or you have lived in rent. Most of us have, right? So if it's an 11-month contract, you don't need to pay stamp duty. I mean, there's there's no need for registration. Like along with payment of stamp duty, there's also a concept of registration. So there are certain contracts that require you to compulsorily go to the sub-registrar's office and get a registration done. Right? Since we're dealing with contracts and since, NFTs also are not exempt from this. So if you're dealing in an NFT transaction, so let me give you an example of what I see the future of this being and how you and I will experience this. So I don't know whether you're aware, but there is a massive program being undertaken currently where the government is recording all the land, all immovable properties onto the blockchain. Karnataka is doing it. I think Telangana is doing it. Chhattisgarh is doing it. And now it's happening pan-India. Like even in Assam, 2 districts, the land has come onto the blockchain. And what that means is that each parcel of land has been given a ULPIN, right? It's a unique identification number, basically, land parcel number. It's a bit like an Aadhaar for a land, right? Now, once you have that, and that records it geofences your location, right? It has a lot of details about the land, including ownership and whether there is anything, whether there are any encumbrances on the land, whether there is litigation pending regarding the land. All these things are in that token itself, which otherwise today it's in like various department files, God knows where. So that's what actually leads to a lot of the land fraud and land disputes. And in Assam, I'm seeing a lot of that today. So now this token, once this land has been tokenized, there is a portal that's being built out on which you will be able to buy and sell your land through that portal, right? And all these requirements that I'm saying of a registration, of a stamp duty payment can all happen online over there.
Oh, wow.
Right? So they will do a lot of things because ultimately the law is trying to prevent a certain amount of mischief. The reason these systems are put in place is to ensure that if you're selling land, you better make sure a third party, which is the sub-registrar, identifies both parties and takes their fingerprint. So tomorrow you cannot be like, I did not sign this paper. It's a mandatory service you have to take when selling immovable property, right? So, but now if the entire issue of this fraud or this you turning, backwards is completely done away with because it will be fingerprinted and there'll be a camera pointing at your face when you press the sell button, then that's the end of that. So the mischief has been avoided. So the government is like, then we don't have to put it through this onerous regulation. So that's how I think a lot of the regulations will meet the technology
That'll be a
in the
beautiful
coming.
step to go ahead. Yes.
It's going there. It's going there. I don't doubt it.
One main question on this. What is the difference between government blockchain versus the existing database they have?
Okay, so the existing database is in silos, right? And the government blockchain how do I answer this? Okay. So there's nothing called the government blockchain. Okay. Nothing called a government blockchain because the government has not built a blockchain from scratch. What the government is building is something called a digital public infrastructure, a DPI. And that's a layered stack of protocols and applications and interfaces. These are the three things, right? That are being built by the government that may include blockchain elements to it. So for example, if I don't know whether you've used Digi Yatra. Okay. When you please do use it next time you're traveling. And when you use it, you'll realize that your boarding pass becomes a token. And this token has to be shared from your Digi Yatra wallet to the airport wallet. Okay. And when you go to the airport, it recognizes your face, which is essentially a QR code to the airport. The airport doesn't know that Tanmay Shah, who looks like what you look like, is showing up. They cannot recreate your likelihood from that data that they've got. They've just got a token. And that token has a QR code. That QR code is your face. So the moment this guy scans the camera scans your face, it says enter, and in you go. That's the end of that. And after 2 days, the token in the airport gets burnt. That's the system. And this, I believe, has been built on, I think, a private blockchain, an enterprise-grade blockchain called Hyperledger. They built it on that. Hyperledger. Okay, this is yet to be confirmed. Hyperledger is...
Who owns the Hyperledger?
Nobody. It's not owned by anybody. It's run by a foundation based with Linux. So it's a Linux-based open source foundation. So the government has taken an open source protocol, which is the Hyperledger protocol, and built a digital public infrastructure solution on it. So that is how it is actually happening. So there's this thing called ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce. That's on something called the Beckett protocol. That's also an open source protocol. So there are these various open source protocols on which the government is trying to position itself. And this is actually a geopolitical move. And we can get into that a little bit more. Yeah. So what's happening today is that if you look at the world around you, and this will touch upon regulations in crypto as well, right? So most technology regulations are in three camps today. So you have the private sector camp, which is America. America says, boss, private enterprise, full fatte, you please go do what you have to do, right? We will not step in your way. Government is bad, private enterprise is good. Please run with it. So you have all these behemoths that have obviously come out of America. You know the names, right? The Alphabet and Google and Facebook. Alphabet, Meta, and then what do you have? All of them, Microsoft, all of these guys, right? Where they are at great liberty to do what they want with your data. The government is not interfering in that sense, right? So the public and the enterprise have to negotiate on their own. The government is like, boss, we've just ensured free enterprise, rest is up to you. If the market says you are being punished, then you are being punished. I'm not going to step into it, right? And there are obviously regulators like the competition regulator and the consumer protection and SEC. They're there trying to hold fort. But this is the basic theme. On the other hand, you have the European Union style of regulations. And usually we think of, EU and America as one camp, but their regulations actually differ quite a bit and they're in conflict. Because EU is a rights-based regulation, right? So EU says that we have to protect the rights of our citizens. So that's why right to forget will come from there. GDPR will come from there. The AI Act is now coming from there. So they regulate through this. So then what happens is that when...
Can you give an example of what is right-based? Who decides the rights?
GDPR. So they have some very fundamental rights. So they say that, listen, we need consent. There has to be user autonomy. The user should be able to dictate what happens. The American regulators don't consider that too much. Okay. So you will remember.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, GDPR. So GDPR is a law that regulates data protection all around the world. And how the EU did it was that it says if you are providing services or collecting data from European Union citizens, then you will have to ensure that you meet these guidelines, right? These requirements. And the requirements are you will have to take explicit consent. You'll have to tell them explicitly how long you'll keep the data, for what you'll use the data, right? And what mechanism they have to actually get their data deleted. So this is now done to protect not the corporations, but to protect the individuals. right? And an argument is raised, rightly, wrongly, not getting into that because of all these onerous regulations, EU does not have the behemoth tech companies that it should have. Okay, that's an argument.
What does America do on the other hand?
So America has no choice. So first they fight, they lobby, all that happens, the cases happen, lobbying happens, PR blitz happen, but ultimately GDR came about. And when GDR came about, the very next day or soon thereafter, once the compliance date was hit, I and you and everybody around the world who use any of these American products like Google, Google, whatever, you got a pop-up saying that now we are changing our regime, you are being assured these rights as well. Because Google realized that now if they want to comply with GDPR, it's better to just do it for the entire suite of services for everybody across the world than just EU. So you also enjoy the same rights now. Got it?
What is the full form of GDPR?
I'll have to just look at that. But it's basically for data protection. General data protection.
General Data Protection Regulation.
Yeah, there you are. General Data Protection. I forgot the R. So that's what it is. So we also now have our own data protection law that's come about, right? So now, like adding on to your DPI.
Okay.
Yeah.
So America is more favors to the private. There's nothing government doing.
Yeah.
Everything is what is companies let
Yeah.
you do what you want.
Yeah.
EU is like, I want to protect the rights of my citizens.
Correct.
Whatever is fair to them.
Yeah.
They are the first people who need to be saved.
Correct.
How is India in this situation?
So there's the third one. We are the fourth. The third one is China. Right? Okay, that's clear. They're like, yeah, my country, my rules. And I will control my citizen. Everything belongs to me. Baki sab aap log dekh lena. Okay? So if you're coming to work in China, then you better toe my line. And Chinese, there's the Great Wall of China, and that's their style of regulating.
So India, government. You only listen to the
state.
Government.
So technically, I'll say state-based regulations.
So right? Only the state, no private doing, and no citizens, nothing, no rights. Yeah, only just listen to the government. Or the state, right?
Yeah. So there is a layer. I mean, there is a lot of, what would I say? There's a lot of enterprise there, but it is all under the government. You don't like, the government doesn't like, वो 2 minute में खत्म हो जाएगा. आप High Court जाके 226 का rate करके, मतलब you cannot stop the orders and fight it out like that. There's little to no power, right? And we've all seen what's happened to Jack Ma. He's not there anymore. I don't know where he's gone. So now the fourth view of how to regulate is coming from India. So they are putting forward a view that says we can actually have kind of a distributed, open sourced, open API ecosystem that is built by the government. So the trust comes from the government. So the government says, we will give you an identity layer. None of these guys have an identity layer. I mean, China obviously has the mother of all identity layers. So they know exactly where anybody is at any point of time. They have gait analysis. So even if you are masked, just the way you walk, they'll tell you who you are. Okay. So yeah, GAIT, gait analysis. So that's different. I'm not going there. But America, you don't have an identity layer as such. So India has done the Aadhaar. Right? Now, yes, many things right and wrong with the Aadhaar. Not getting into that. But this layer now does exist. Which means that any product can plug into this today. Right? And get a centralized or a electronic KYC done, which yesterday would have been a very, very problematic thing to do with all the signatures and paper and couriering. So that layer is there. So now that is a big part of, let's say, the DPI layer, and it's done in-house. But what you build on it is completely up to you. So as I said, Hyperledger is used an open protocol. So what they're trying to do, the government, is they're trying to prevent centralization of data. So they are saying that all the aspects of data that are required to be that are required for any transaction will stay at the edges. So the Aadhaar servers will have the Aadhaar data. Your ICICI servers will have your ICICI data, and your mutual fund servers will have your mutual fund data. But access will be given to each other so that you can see whatever is wherever from any perspective. So today, I don't know whether you've realized this, but if you go to any of your DMAT service providers, you can link all your DMAT and all your securities in one platform. And each one of them knows exactly what all of them are doing. Because underneath, they've all come onto one platform. Right? But the data is not stored centrally. The data is stored in a decentralized manner. So that is the third way. So India is actually exporting that. They're saying this is our way. So UPI is similar. So this is, we have this UPI, which is the Unified Payments Interface, right? They said we have this UPI layer, and if somebody in Singapore wants to transact using this with an Indian citizen, by all means, we'll take Singapore's Aadhaar version. No problem. Similarly, with UAE, we've opened up UPI. Germany, Malaysia, a bunch of other countries, we are now spreading our UPI thing. So if you are traveling abroad, your UPI app may even work there. That's the idea, which is a huge thing. And keep in mind,
the news with the France, you can pay
Right?
with UPI in France.
Come on, that's quite wild. And keep in mind that this is a geopolitical move, because if you remember what happened with Russia, they were stifled because of the SWIFT network. SWIFT is a interbank messaging service that they have, which kind of America controls. So UPI is going to break that. And the funny thing is that now with perspective, a lot of people said crypto will be the one that will break SWIFT. Okay, so the government of India said, नहीं आप रुकिए, हमारे पास एक और solution है. So that's why nobody's talking about Bitcoin too much, right? That back in the day, there was like, oh, Bitcoin coffee, Bitcoin taxes, Bitcoin this, Bitcoin for like the electronic cash. That was what it was supposed to be. But the electronic cash today in India is UPI. It's GPay. It's not
Because
some
we can do
cryptocurrency.
that, all those things with Indian rupees, and it's much quicker than the
Absolutely. Private blockchain, public
Yeah.
blockchains. Plus, I mean, there's the energy aspect of it also, right? And the
no
interface
gas
of
fees.
no gas fees. And crypto interfaces have a long way to go. That's,
So-
I think, the bottleneck.
Let's go a little deeper into this geopolitical move. It was superb to know the fourth perspective of geopolitics and how data is to be governed and run, and the philosophy and regulation for that. Open source. India's providing is focused on identity layers and keeping things open source, and the government is the one which is doing the creating the systems and the structure for the open source.
Correct.
How does that compare to American or even the, what do you say, European Union's, as we've spoken about European Union's GDPR,
PR.
how does it compare to this?
Okay, so let me take the example of Amazon. Okay, so now when Amazon was conceptualized, or when Amazon does its business, it is regulated by whatever normal American or European laws exist. But at the end of the day, it's a private enterprise run for profit. Correct? But now India is saying that, listen, we may not need it. Amazons are fully welcome. As you know, I'm sure you've been using Amazon on a daily basis, and your listeners also do the same. But the government is providing an alternative in the form of ONDC, which is an Amazon, but with more functionality. Right? So which means that a MSME can actually register using his Udhyam number, right? Which is there inherent, let's say, Aadhaar number sorts. And me as a user can also onboard myself there using my Aadhaar number, or basically my Aadhaar. And all of us can transact on that one platform for little to no fees. So the government has absorbed all of that. Because the government is like, we'll make money on our taxes, don't worry. Right? So that's what they're saying. And we'll take the tax electronically. We've anyway given you the CBDC, right? The e-rupee is coming. So you use your e-rupee. The smart contract will take whatever taxes have to be there. Your reporting then is like automated. A lot of your CA costs will go away, right? Because see, the concept here is of velocity, liquidity and velocity. Okay, these are the concepts. Because how India is trying to maximize its already existing value. मतलब जो है उसको तो बढ़ाओ ना. Instead of thinking of the moon, let's figure out Earth first. That's the concept. So think about land. All of us own land somewhere or the other, hopefully, right? गांव शाव कहीं है. But to buy and sell land is not even a concept we tackle too much. Because we're like, who's going to go through all those hassles of buying and selling and due diligence? Start को भाई छोड़ो. पड़ा हुआ बोलेगा कि भाई बेच दे मुझे. You take all the headache, you take the discount also, you say, give me the money. That's how land deals today happen. उसमें भी मतलब झंझट. ठीक है? But now, so which means that land parcel doesn't move from point A to point B very fast. It gets stuck. There's no liquidity in that land. Right? But now, what happens is, if you are able to sell and buy that land on a weekly basis,
Oh, wow.
right? So that means what? The money is moving a lot faster. Little profits are being generated. That profit is being taxed as a capital gain. Look at UPI. What's happened with UPI is what if I had 1,000 rupees, but I had no means to spend that 1,000 rupees, means that 1,000 rupees sits in my pocket. I'm hungry. I want to spend to eat, but I can't. उस बंदे के पास खुलना नहीं है. खत्म हो गई बात वहीं पे. ठीक है? Something that basic. But now if I'm going and doing Paytm or whatever, the QR code magic, then suddenly I'm spending 3 rupees and buying something. So 3 rupees is now in circulation. Right? So earlier money used to travel at the pace of a human hand, but now it travels at the pace of light. So that velocity of money really adds a lot to the economy as a whole, right? And that also, so velocity on one side and liquidity on the other side. So all asset classes that we have today will get liquidity. So if I can take this mic of mine and I say, whoever in my neighborhood wants to rent this mic out, go onto that platform, pay me 3 rupees and take my mic for 2 hours, it can happen, right? So money will come, money will circulate, and my asset will also get used.
So interesting. Let's take the promises that crypto and blockchain made in 2017s and 2021s and see how that fits in with the government's explanation that what the government is trying to do and what actually the scope remains. Does it remain or does it not remain if government is doing all those things? So, number one, and the biggest attracting point for me to get into NFTs, I was following crypto since 2016, but I never really went into it because I was not on the tech side. And even for entering it as somebody non-tech, it was only speculation. It was nothing, no use case value for it. Then came the NFTs in 2020, 2021. It was like, wow, I'm an artist. I am a creative. I can actually sell my artworks around the world. At 24/7 display, it can be there 24/7, open to everybody. It's better than displaying it at a local gallery, which is only meant for the local people at particular time slots. And transaction में भी बहुत problem आएगा. All these writing bills and notes and contracts and all that. Everything that is taken over by NFTs, and I can even sell digital asset now. So biggest conclusion I made from that was blockchain provides ownership of digital assets.
Yes.
You get likes on Instagram, but now you can actually make money from those whatever posts you're putting. So ownership of digital assets was a core benefit of blockchain. How does that sit in today's environment?
So what you've said is actually quite profound. The fact is that blockchain does unlock an entire new world where digital assets can now be owned. But more importantly, digital assets can now be possessed. Okay. And I want to pause here for a bit because possession is a part that often gets overlooked when we are talking about digital assets. Ownership, so like rights, when you talk of, and I'm being very general here, but rights can be of two types in this context. One is a personal right, which is a right to receive something from somewhere. So for example, if you have a demat share, right, you don't really own the company, but you own a right to the profits of the company. Similarly, if you own a share of a REIT, real estate investment trust, the same thing, right? But conversely, if you own a right to a car, then you actually own the real right to the car, which means that you will sit on it, you will drive it. Correct? So for the longest time, humans have only had physical assets. There was no concept of a virtual asset. There was not even a concept of an intangible asset. Because in my world, I see three types of asset classes, buckets basically. So physical is the oldest one. We've had it for as long as we can remember, right? The moment the king stood up and said, ki ye meri zameen hai, physical assets became a thing. Humans also have been physical assets. I mean, if you look at it that way. So that's a dark history, right? So then somewhere about 100 years ago, we got intangible assets in the form of intellectual property. Now, nobody can eat goodwill. Can't hold it in your hand, but it is a right that finds its way into balance sheets and then has value. So that's intangible assets. And that's where things stood for the longest time. With the blockchain revolution, you've got a third category of ownership of assets, and ownership in a possession, in a technical, legal, literal you can possess it sense. Because if I can hold my Bitcoin or any digital asset in a ledger, in a physical, like let's say my, in a physical ledger, in a pen drive, or in any physical source where the private key is stored, then I possess it in that place. It's in my possession, right? If that gets destroyed, then the asset gets destroyed. And whoever else has access to that key then has access to the actual, to the good, so to say, to the or service, as the case may be. So that is, I think, the biggest shift that has happened, that now we can own and possess digital assets. And it is something that is highly counterintuitive, because we have spent the last 20 years, maybe 15 years, with digital assets being completely shareable and not possessive. You cannot possess it. You cannot possess a meme, theoretically speaking. But now you may be able to do that. That's the point, right? So what the implications of this are for society as a large is, I think, a very broad question. I actually don't have the answer. I am 100% certain that the implications are positive and very far reaching. But in the short term, how it is going to play out in the next 3 to 5 years, I don't know. I can see trends, and I see that the government is rightfully concerned about this, because this allows a different model and structure for human beings to organize themselves around. It may even start, chipping away at concepts sacred to us, like nation states. Something like that can also start getting impacted if people can own anything anywhere and the government has no control or sight of it, right? So the risk is quite huge. I mean, the upsides are also equally huge, if not much. I would say the risks are not as big as the upsides would be. But at the same time, the government will see the risks. They're like, upsides here, we have given you all this. Now, what's wrong? Yesterday you were at point A, now we are at point, Y. Things are moving. Please, we'll do it slowly, we'll do it systematically. This revolution is not going anywhere. So in the larger scheme of things, I would say that all these conversations we've been having for the last 3-4 years will not really matter long term, except for the fact that these conversations are required to ensure that the revolution reaches a swift and, it happens. But the wheel will turn. I think the revolution of digital assets will happen. And whether now, like, let's assume for a moment that the government says, whitelist your wallets with us. You can own any asset you want under the sun, just whitelist your wallets with us. That may be a system on how something that's completely global and distributed comes within the white and regulated net of the government. So many considerations, but I'm shying away from giving a very definitive answer to this.
That's why nobody talks about Web3 now, right? Because it's okay. That's the question to you.
Yeah.
Why did the bubble burst?
So, 2 answers.
Why? Okay, let me rephrase it again so I can make a better shot out of it. Why did the Web3 bubble burst?
Okay. So, answer 1. I'll give you many answers. Answer 1, Web3 bubble has not burst. Reason, as a lawyer, I will say that the definition of Web3 is too vague and unclear. It is more of a marketing term. So, what part of Web3 has burst and what part of Web3 has not burst, I don't know. Right? So, for example, let's say Algorand. The price of the token may have gone down, but the number of projects building on it may have gone up. So, has the bubble burst? Right? So, that's one. Now, when it comes to the asset price side of things, which is a very, what would I say? So, okay. So, there are cycles, there are tech cycles. Okay. Tech cycles are something that I have learned from a lady called Carlota Perez, and something that I would recommend everybody look at, because it will really explain a lot of the vagaries of, the markets in a very systematic way. What happens is there is always a point where there is a innovation. Let's say NFTs was the innovation, right? More specifically, let's say your ERC 721 was the innovation that took place. That's the innovation trigger. The moment that trigger happens, you had CryptoKitties and you had a bunch of other guys building on it. Usually using that, there's a speculative boom. The speculative boom brings with it all the money and all the speculators looking for a quick buck. That is actually usually projected to be a bad thing. But in a tech cycle, it is absolutely essential. It's basically crowdsourcing a revolution, a technological revolution, right? And everybody knows that they don't think, but somewhere they know that they can lose money. If they don't, they better well know that. And that's why we keep saying risks, consumer protection, do your own research. That's the whole reason. So once this technological bubble kind of gets all the speculator money, people tend to overestimate what will happen in the short term. So it goes and reaches what is known as the peak of unmet expectations. Okay, then ye to sara crap. So people start dumping. So then you have the trough, right? So that is usually the cycle what we see. This trough is what we call a winter. Now there'll be many technologies, many protocols, many projects that never recover from the trough. Khatam. Nationally, natural selection has done its job. Okay. But you will see in most of the hardcore projects like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the others, and the market as a whole, that the trough never comes below the past bottom in most cases, right? It just comes maybe like 75% down, it'll come 80% also, but zero nahi hota. And even in the year 2000, you saw similar trend. Like the bottom doesn't break out. It may even kiss it also, but it usually stays right there. And from there, if there's a revival to be had, the revival begins. So that's when you get your golden period, because all the projects that had to pick up all the speculative money have now picked up that money. They picked up the money on promises of what the field will be like. All the people who've had to lose their money have now lost the money. And these projects that were genuine have now been built. So once it's been built, the seed is now fertile for the next innovation and the next speculative bubble, which is what's happening now. And I sense this, or rather I deduce this quite clearly, because the number of meetings I have with Web3 founders and Web3 projects when the bubble has burst is very low. I can go days without a meeting with the Web3 founder. But now I know, because for the last month and a half, my phone has been quite busy because Web3 people have started building. They need lawyers, so I'm on constant meetings. दिन के 2 meeting, 3 meeting हो जाते हैं वहाँ. ठीक है? So and most of these projects will not see the next round potentially. That's the way of markets, right? So, but I know that the money is now coming, because all those who made money in the last, who got in at the bottom, now they are at the top, so they are taking profits as well. So I see that happening again and again and again, and it's a very common cycle. So we are just in that cycle, and we need the cycle day and night. We need it. They cannot be like static up, up, up. That's a recipe for disaster, because then when the crash happens, we'll be in a different state of affairs.
Even in my office, there are a couple of people who are still working and building in Web3 and blockchain. But the only thing I hear from them is these are engineers who are coding. They're like, I don't invest in it. I've never put my own money. I don't know where the space is going, but I just like to do the coding for it.
Excellent. My point is they've invested time, no? That's good enough.
So my question is, where is Web3
The
or
space
blockchain
going?
heading? Yeah.
So it is heading towards a space of more maturity. So that's for certain. Okay. The positive things that I see that have happened in the last couple of years is that international consensus is being raised and has been reached on what needs to be regulated and how. So let's take it from a top-down approach. Internationally, there is consensus that there are 3 meta risks that have to be covered. Number 1, money laundering, terror financing, sanction evasion. No individual should be able to do these things. And I don't think anybody is going to agree that they should be allowed, right? So the governments around the world, and there are these like multilateral bodies essentially that are sitting together and deciding what kind of regulation should come, right? You have the Basel norms, you have the Financial Stability Board, you have the Organization of Security Commissions of the world. So all these kind of organizations are there that are sitting together and making rules for each of their domains, and all of them regulate a certain activity, right? So they're making rules for each of their domains that their member states, India, everywhere, globally, that will become the standard. Because people have understood, they have understood, we are also understanding that this is a global movement. And that's really the key of blockchain. Because blockchain allows a global economy like no other. So India can keep doing DPI and it can keep sending its geopolitical, it can keep pushing the DPI model abroad, right? as its own thing, but there will always be a requirement for a global marketplace, let's call it that belongs to the commons. Okay, and I want to just pause here for the word commons because people tend to overlook it. Things can be owned by the state, things can be owned by the individual, and usually we only think in this binary. By individual, I mean corporate, whatever, right? But state, non-state, that's how we look at it. But there is a third form of ownership, and that's ownership of the commons, which means that it belongs to everybody. Nobody can assert a right, and usually that is by design, right? So the internet is designed in such a manner that it is difficult for any one individual or one country or one corporation to exert its influence. It's not that it's not done or people don't try, but it's difficult, right? So you can say that internet is something that's in the commons. Similarly, blockchain is meant to be a technology for the commons. That's where it shines. That's why Bitcoin does so well, Ethereum does so well, right? Because these are all protocols in the commons. Vitalik may be responsible for coding it, the Ethereum Foundation may be responsible for running it, but at the end of the day, it's the commons that is the real force behind these protocols. So the point being that now that the layer of technology in the common space is not fully built out. Internet is the big one, right? But now internet is leading to many protocols that are being built on it. So I think that revolution is where the key, and that's where the Web3 will really have its impact. And Web3 is a sleeping giant. There are many issues with Web3. This is my view. My view is that Web3 is today suffering an interface problem. Marketing PR that will solve itself, according to me. The interface problem is where we suffer mainly. Now, keep in mind
Can you go deeper
Yes.
on that? What is the interface?
I'll give you an
problem?
example. I'll give you an example that you will recall and live through probably. There was a time when computers did not have operating softwares, operating systems. There was no Windows 98. Okay. You had to code what's in a computer. So that time it is very difficult to imagine the value of a computer. Right? My mother used to run a computer training institute in the year 1993. Right? I was some 6 or 7 years old at that point. And computer screens, I remember looking at that computer screen and saying, what kind of a TV is this? I can't even see anything. Okay. I was most disgusted. Typing a key, some green thing is happening. I'm like, hey, nonsense. I'm a 7-year-old kid. But even as a 7-year-old kid, I could see that this is a useless tool. Right? Obviously, it's not. My mother had different views because she was teaching the course over there. But point being that for anybody to understand what a computer could be worth without the operating software was very difficult. Only the geniuses somewhere had this whole vision ki aisa hoga. Okay. But that would have been a very small band of people. So similarly, crypto is at a stage where there is no operating system equivalent. And an operating system is an interface. Right? Today I can double click and a folder will magically open. Earlier I'll have to punch in a bunch of code. Now imagine the difference in that. So today, if I want to interact with the crypto ecosystem, I have to download a wallet, write down private keys, pray that I don't lose it. कितना प्रेशर है भाई, कितने YouTube वीडियोस बने हैं जिसमें लोग बोलते हैं not your keys, not your coins, don't lose your keys, protect it with your life. I mean, nobody wants that kind of load. They've got enough tensions in life, right? Yes, if I have $1 million of Bitcoin, then I will take every effort, surely. But most people will not have $1 billion of Bitcoin. They may be at the edge where they're trying to just see what the space is about and what I can do with it, right? And keep in mind, it's only after the operating system came that India and other countries also started getting their IT regulations. Because that's when the regulator is like, हाँ, अब हमारे बंदे इसमें घुसेंगे. अब tier 2 and tier 3 cities में इसका impact होगा, right? And how you can think of this in economic terms is known as a GPT, not general pre-trained transformer, but general purpose technology. So any technology that is used by the household and the individual and the firm, like a car or internet, right, or electricity, these are all GPTs, right? So one can say that blockchain is not yet a GPT, even though AI is becoming a GPT. So usually the government waits to see what the general purpose of it is, how deeply it's going to impact the economy, and then only the regulations. So even today when we talk, like I'm part of this organization called Bharat Web3 Association, that is an interface between the industry, the Web3 industry in India, as well as the government. So they talk to the RBI regulators, they talk to the securities, SEBI, they talk to consumer protection guys, they talk to law enforcement agencies. I mean, you name the list, they're all talking to everybody. Because essentially, these conversations need to happen, right? And they're also trying to positively ensure that wherever little tweaks can be made to ensure that Web3 businesses get some that are brought to an even playing field with other businesses and not disadvantaged. Bharat Web3 Association tries to ensure that that's happening. Its larger objective is obviously to make an entire industry out of it, which it's, I think, well on its way of doing. And it's only 1 year old. So from this experience, I've seen that when you go and have a conversation with the taxman, the finance ministry, let's say in this case, and you say, ki boss, this 30% is very bad. Please remove this 30%. So they turn back and say, ki boss, show me a person from a tier 2, tier 3 city who's not being able to hire a person because he's paying this 30% tax. And वहाँ पे बात थोड़ी सी कम हो जाती. Because the developer you mentioned, he's getting his money normally. He's not paying no 30% tax on it, right? So this is only on digital assets that are not exempted, like we discussed earlier on this discussion, right? So the number of people actually building in the space who are actually getting impacted and then actually making representations to the government is still very small. And it's now leading to a negative, it's like a negative feedback because people are like, yaar, ye space to negative hai, government सुन नहीं रही हमारी बात, तो why should we build? हम AI का प्रोडक्ट बना लेते हैं ड्रोन्स में, and the government is like कोई बना ही नहीं रहा है, हम बोल रहे हैं कि गवर्नमेंट तुम्हारे regulations के वजह. So it's like getting into that feedback loop. But the long story short is that the space itself will make sure that enough people will produce, enough startups will happen, right? Like I advised this organization called Web3 Assam, and they have, I think, in the last year gone to 40 schools and colleges preaching the gospel of blockchain, right? Different blockchains, like private blockchains, engage them. They, do courses, teach them. So उसमें से अब हमारे cohorts निकली हैं, cohorts में से 2-3 startup निकले हैं. But Assam government is now looking at them and saying, okay, wait a minute, you guys are doing something legitimate here, right? So both sides have to kind of activate.
Give an example of what did the government find legitimate about Web3?
So the government is very keen on the fact that Web3 is allowing for provenance. Okay, I'll give you a live example. Assam has a cultural artifact known as the gamusa. Okay, I don't know whether you've clocked it. It's a white and red cloth.
Spell it. I'll try to pull it on the.
Yeah, GAMUSA. In Hindi,
like a samosa with a G.
Yeah, something like that. In Hindi, it's called a gamcha.
Okay. Gamcha. Okay.
Right? So in Assam, the gamcha is like a gamusa is very revered. It's what you give to your guests at a, that guy. So those two circles.
Red colored.
Yeah. It can be in different colors, but this is the most standard format, let's call it that. And then all the designs, people play around with that. Okay. So now this is a very traditional thing. It is woven by the artisans over here. And gamusa literally translates to gamusa, like to wipe the body. So it's like a towel, but it's got a very reverential thing over here. It's got a cultural value. So now Assam has got GI protection for the gamusa, which means that if it is coming from certain regions in Assam, then it will be GI tagged and it'll have an advantage to that. But how do you prove that it's come from Assam and not come from China or Karnataka, as the case may be, right? Then you need to ensure that the provenance is recorded onto the blockchain. So there's this organization called LW3. They're based out of Assam. So they do traceability solutions. So they are using, and this is a good example of how the public blockchain meets businesses, right? They work with Algorand. They're part of the Algorand initiative foundation, in the sense that Algorand is supporting them in making an infrastructure where gamusas can be tokenized, and not only gamusas, but there are other traceability solutions as well. Okay. And now what happens is that this company LW3, they ensure that you can trace anything. It can be turmeric, it can be tea, and I'm doing a project with them for tea. So turmeric, tea, a gamusa, some piece of clothing, usually high-end stuff, basically, or things that require GI tagging. So, and that allows you to scan it and then see the details of what that project is on the Algorand blockchain, which is actually public. So, as a user, you don't need to interact with cryptocurrencies, right? As the consumer of that good, you don't need to interact with cryptocurrencies. The organization or the LW3 in this case takes that headache and abstracts the entire solution away for you. So you get the benefits of a public blockchain, which is the gold standard, but you have also the benefits of a normal service without having to have a private key, public key, and getting into that mess. So they solve that interface problem for you, right? Now, this same thing can be done on a private blockchain also, but public blockchains have a much better architecture for this. So now, seeing this example, the Assam government has, I think, instructed or worked with certain individuals from the Tezpur University, where they're trying to come up with a paper where Assamese cultural artifacts will be backed by NFTs. So I think that's one example of how this movement can actually take place.
Beautiful, amazing. So provenance is another promise of blockchain when
blockchain,
you are
exactly.
doing NFTs.
Yeah.
Which blockchain to go with? How does government decide on that? Algorand ho gaya, Ethereum, Polygon.
I think it comes down to the advisors of the government. Then the government will form some sort of committee. That committee will advise them on what is best for their requirements, right? And accordingly, they will proceed. See, right now, I have not seen the government working too much on public blockchains because that requires the government to buy tokens. And the government today is not in a position where it's comfortable buying tokens. No department wants to buy any crypto tokens. Okay? Because crypto tokens का ना एक बहुत बड़ा problem है. The problem is you don't know where the token is coming from. On one hand, that token is completely traceable, right? Which is very good. But it also means that the token you have could have come from a Taliban wallet. And that can be exposed at a later date. So people are a little wary. Right?
So from the political standpoint, like PR standpoint of politics,
yes.
कि हाँ ये तो wallet इनका तालिबान के wallet से आया.
हाँ, उसके मतलब from the Taliban it could have gone to a normal individual, then gone to a French wallet, then gone to a Nigerian wallet, and then come to you, right? So ideally, I would suggest that the government actually needs to consider mining its own cryptocurrencies and having its own source like that. Because once you mine a cryptocurrency, you get a clear source, right? वो white label होके मत white label you white. It's a completely white, transparent token that you've got. So that's what the government needs to consider. It needs to have a mining department, right?
Why? Mine for what? Mine for blockchain? Mine for bitcoins or mine for Ethereum?
I
or
think
create your own blockchain.
My fantasy is that the government should mine every cryptocurrency, or at least it should mine all blue chip cryptocurrencies so that it knows exactly what the currency is doing at any given point of time. And I have to give another caveat here. Currency is the wrong word for this token. Okay? Because we use the word cryptocurrency for Bitcoin also, Algorand also, Ethereum also. But these are not currencies. And a lot of heartburn to many users and the government has taken place because of this wrong nomenclature. Currency, when the RBI looks at it, is a technical word under the RBI Act. And it's like, boss, only the RBI can issue a currency. And that is the Indian rupee. So when you go out and you say, boss, this is a cryptocurrency, crypto is just the tech. You are still the activities of issuing a currency.
So what is crypto according to the government, if not a currency?
So crypto they've got a very big definition. So crypto, they've expanded it out to mean a virtual digital asset. Okay. And a virtual digital asset has found this definition for the first time in the Income Tax Act. And that is a very broad definition that says basically any information that is cryptographically secure and tokenized. That's what it means. And then they've carved out the exceptions. That's what they've done.
So what are the exceptions?
Those ones I told you, that if it's backed by a physical asset, if you're using it for marketing, so those exceptions. So even though they may be on a public blockchain and it can be Ethereum token, Ethereum NFT, but the government will not treat it as a virtual digital asset. Because it's doing the work of a glorified receipt, basically, or a coupon. So it's not The tech. So keep in mind, the tech does not get regulated. The activities get regulated.
Okay, coming back to that, as a lawyer, have you come across a case where two parties are disputing over an asset which is on the blockchain but doesn't have a stamp paper or government check, and
No,
yet the government is like, this is valid. They are what do you say, addressing or entertaining that case.
no, not as of now. I have not come across that. See, there have been cases where uh, people have disputed who owns, let's say, Bitcoin. Right? There is X amount of Bitcoin. It's in a particular wallet. It may even be something as simple as particular Bitcoin in a third-party wallet like a Coin DCX or a WazirX wallet. And one person goes to the police and says, "मेरा Bitcoin चोरी हो गया है, उस wallet में चला गया." तो वो wallet कहाँ है? WazirX के पास है. WazirX को नोटिस जाएगा, बोलेगा इस wallet account को आप सील करिएगा, freeze करो अभी. So a dispute will ensue. Then one party will say, "No, I gave him money. I bought it from him." He'll say, "मुझे तो कभी पैसा नहीं मिला." Right? So the fact is that the blockchain part is not being disputed. The tokens exist, where it was, where it went, that's fact. अब उसका किसका right है, वो transaction is why you need a contract. Right? So the contractual dispute is basically what you're talking about, and how the contractual dispute will get resolved is an open question. But legacy laws will apply.
Talking about provenance again, because there was another key selling point of Web3. Do you think that the national central government will plan out a way, because that's so good to plan a GI? In fact, when startup approached me, they want to document all GIs from different states and promote made in India, make in India. Do you think that national government is planning to do something like that? And in that case, which blockchain should I put my money on?
Oh, so I don't know. I doubt they will do it on a public blockchain straight up. I think they may have regulations that allow companies like LW3, basically. They will probably leave it to the public to actually figure out a solution that works best for them, right? And let me tell you what the government has done and why LW3 is being able to do what it does. So the government modified the Companies Act a couple of years back, and that modification basically brought in a line where in your balance sheet you could report your cryptocurrency holdings, your digital asset holdings. Something as simple as that, but profound. Because now, as a company, I may have gold, I may have stocks, I can also have crypto. Right? So now when LW3 or a company like it receives crypto from maybe the foundation itself, or maybe it buys it in the open market, it has a clear way to show that, see, ये मेरा stock and trade. मैंने ये खरीदा, मैंने ये service दिया, and then I bill that person for the service of, let's say, selling him a NFC tag. Not NFT, NFC tag. Okay. So NFC tag gets put on a basta, NFC tag gets put on a crate, and then whoever down the line scans that NFC tag gets all the details, and the details get pulled from a public blockchain. Beautiful solution, right? But the government has allowed this guy now to own the crypto and to spend the crypto and declare the crypto.
That's a great step.
Yes. So that's how I think the small baby steps are being taken.
People who want to do serious business or invest, not an investment advice to your own research, but what do you think?
Huh? Yeah,
what do you think which chains should people follow?
I would think that people should follow the blue chip chains. That's to start with. Everything else is speculation, right? And beyond that, you do your own research. I really would not venture to support one chain over the other chain, right? It's there are too many chains. They're doing too many things. Many functionalities are same. Many are different. I actually have this advice that when you are approaching any investment, including an investment in a blockchain token or a blockchain-based token, or a blockchain itself, you have to come at it from your own experience, your own domain, right? So if you are, let's say, a marine engineer, so you look at chains that are working with marine engineering, because you understand marine engineering. You don't understand blockchain. Okay? So then when you see the solutions that the blockchain is coming up with for a domain that you understand, you'll automatically be able to know this blockchain good, this blockchain bad. And then you'll know कि हाँ, marine engineering में ये बंदा सही gap solve कर रहा है. Bet on that gap. Because you know that there's a high likelihood that this gap will actually is a legitimate thing and this blockchain will be profitable. Will it be more profitable than the other guy? You don't know. But you should not even go down that. That's my view. It's not to choose the number one, but ensure that you make some profit and not a loss. Right?
Just like picking shares.
जो समझ आता है वो देखो ना. Exactly.
Do you think Polygon is getting a preferential treatment because it's made in India?
I don't know whether it's getting preferential treatment because the policymakers are treating all crypto people very similarly. But it definitely helps to pitch to the lawmakers saying that, listen, boss, this is a made in India product. You are duty bound to support it. Right? So when a conversation has to happen where a product from Ethereum needs to be used, or product from, let's say, Polygon, even though Polygon is based on Ethereum, right? So let's say if there are two layer 2 solutions that have to be compared, then Polygon will probably get some preferential treatment, but I don't know, or I don't think that's actually what happens on the ground. So it's good to market, but only the Polygon people can give you that answer.
The startups that approach you, what are the main questions that they come to you with?
Oh, so they come to us with a couple of questions, and these are actually generic questions for most startups, not necessarily for crypto itself. One would be, how do we structure ourselves? So the most basic level is, there are three of us, we have this idea, हमें ये काम करना है, वो बंदा पैसा देने के लिए तैयार भी है. How do we structure ourselves? Do we start a LLP, partnership, company, Section 8? What do we do? Right? So that's the first level. And that leads to a discussion on who will get what share, who will wear what hat, con CEO, CFO. All those questions become part of that discussion. The second part of it is that once you now have an entity, you need to start getting employees in order or consultants. So you need contracts. So there's a little bit of contract work that goes in. So a little suite of contracts to ensure that whatever you're building is built securely and you have the rights to the things you're building. Right? That will also include things like privacy policies on websites and cookie policies, terms and conditions on websites, because most people now interact over a website. So if you have a product, then what are the regulations that guide that product? If somebody's into a fintech product, they'll have different regulations. Somebody's doing ag tech, different regulations. So they want clarity on those regulations. So those are the broad things. And one thing that they don't come to us with, but we make sure that they become aware of it, is IP protection. कि boss, आप please अपना IP देखो, because at the end of the day, IP is the main money churn. It's that second category of asset, intangible assets. आजकल ज्यादा लोग physical asset में नहीं घुसते हैं. कोई घर गाड़ी घोड़ा नहीं खरीद रहा है. Intellectual property everybody buys. So you make sure of that. And what we are seeing today is a big IP drain is happening in India.
So that is what?
IP drain is happening. Intellectual property drain is happening.
Drain? Why do you say?
If there is an individual, let's say that coder that you're talking about, the developer, who's developing an intellectual property, which is his code, for an entity that's residing outside, then that IP has left the country.
Even though they're making in India, but its ownership is owned by foreign entity, hence the IP drain. Okay. So if you are watching and having any questions about the pre-stated questions, do contact Dhrupad Dada. I'll put his links in the description. Next question, you talked about finance and government is promoting Gift City. What are your thoughts on Gift City and do they have anything scope for? Does Gift City have scope for Web3 NFTs?
100%. I think Gift City is an excellent move, right? And so let's understand what Gift City is touting to do, what it intends to do. So there are many issues that happen when Indian businesses want to operate on a global scale, right? And this happens mainly with access to money. So we have rupees, international businesses work in different currencies. That exchange really can be is a bit of a pain for us to get over. There are a lot of trade regulations, and there are also many regulatory hurdles because things like FEMA, Foreign Exchange Management Act, and other RBI norms kick into high gear when you start taking money or businesses outside of India, right? So to make Indian businesses more competitive, the government came up with this idea of an SEZ, a special economic zone, which is, in this case, it's known as a IFSC, a International Financial Services Center, right? So it's a center for financial services. So what they've said is we're going to set up this IFSC. In this case, this IFSC is called Gift City. There will be more IFSCs. It'll maybe called something else. And in this Gift City, you will have businesses that will come up and establish themselves. And every ecosystem player in the financial ecosystem is expected to be there, including lawyers, banks, fund managers, funds itself, international parties, including things like foreign colleges, right? So it's basically like a bridge between India and the world. That's how they're thinking of it, right? So if a foreign business wants to come and do business in India, they don't want to be exposed to all of India all at once. That's too onerous for them. So they will go to Gift City, establish base, so they're geographically here, and they're in this hybrid mode where they can talk to all the regulators from one window, from one place, right? So it's a microcosm of all the good stuff that India has to offer, and say, "Aap yahan pe aao," and using this as a base, you go wherever you want to. Then you negotiate with the Assamese government and the Karnataka government. That otherwise they'll have to directly deal with these local governments, becomes a big pain. And for Indian businesses going out, they're like, you please establish yourself in Gift City, then you negotiate and do your business in whichever state you want to do business in. There is an example where I believe there is a Web3 company that is issuing fractional ownership of real estate from Gift City. It's a news article right now, but I think they are doing it. So that may be a good way to see how these funds are going to be established. There's something called alternative investments funds, AIFs. So these may be AIF models that will come about.
Can you go deeper on alternative investment funds?
Alternative investment funds, yes. So see, what happens is that the Securities Regulator of India, which is SEBI, okay, Securities Exchange Board of India, SEBI regulates certain types of securities, right? So the first type of security that we are all familiar with is equity, shares in the stock market. The second type would be commodities, right? There's something called there's a commodities regulation, basically, under which the Securities Contract Regulatory Act is there, SCRA, under which commodities are regulated. Third, there is these things called collective investment funds, CIFs. Okay, that's basically old school crowdfunding. So if you want to pick up money from the public, say, I'm going to do this business and give you some returns, but not give them shares in your company, they're called CIFs. And then you have these AIFs, alternative investment funds, right? So these are all ways for an entity, a fund or a company or an entity or a group of people to collect money from the public and achieve an objective, right? But this is exactly how scams happen. It's a hotbed for scams, right? And fraud. Because आप तो कुछ भी promise करोगे, लोग तो पैसे आपको दे देंगे, उसके बाद आप गायब हो जाओगे. So that's the core issue that the Securities Exchange Commission, I mean the SEBI looks at. SEC is for abroad, America. So that's the core issue that SEBI looks at, and AIFs are a way for you to raise funds. But the AIFs are usually for institutional investors or investors who are a little bit savvy. So if there is a foreign investor who wants to invest in, let's say, mobility solution companies in India, correct? He says, ki, boss, Indians are doing great work in mobility, I want to invest. He cannot go and negotiate with one company individually. Very difficult, right? And he may want to invest in shares also. He may want to invest in private limited companies also. So how does he do it? So he can then set up an AIF, or he will have people set up an AIF, and that AIF will then essentially do these transactions for it. So he then talks only to the AIF, and the AIF essentially manages the relationships below, investments below. So it's, long story short, it's a fund, right? And it's a regulated fund, highly regulated fund, but it's a good mode for getting money into the country.
Does crypto, or suppose you said fractional ownership of a company, what kind of crypto or blockchain transactions would come in this?
I think it'll be mainly for bean counting, where the tokens are being used as a placeholder for what rights you have in it. So I don't think it's not available to the public at large in the sense of how a public blockchain or a Ethereum or a Algorand would be. And since it is a fund, that only those institutional investors will be able to invest in that product. And to just step back once more, the activity of issuing fractional ownership of land is actually quite out there. There are two ways that you can do it today sitting here. Number one, you can go onto your demat account and look for REITs, real estate investment trusts, right? So these are trusts that own real estate and they issue shares against the real estate they own, and that entitles you to profit share of the rents. Simple as that. They have a full management fee. After that's minus, rest is distributed amongst all the shareholders. So that is already out there. A simpler version of a REIT as a collective investment fund are also available on various websites, fractional ownership websites. So these two things are already happening. So, and you don't need blockchain for this, right? Blockchain will come into it if you want to secure more rights, you want to have more liquidity in the system. I'm not sure what the business model is. I'm not sure they will be able to list it also on an exchange, because those tokens will probably only be purchasable by accredited investors. So that has to be seen. Maybe they're using blockchain as the backend to ensure that the rights are secure and immutable.
I'll talk about ONDC next.
Hmm.
When is it we're using Amazon and also we are already using it? ONDC has been in discussion and use since quite long. When is it coming
It's
to actual
live.
use?
It's live. It's live. I've booked tickets. I've bought books. I have bought food.
Oh,
So it is. It's very much live and kicking. So you can, I think, go on to it and see how to do what you want to
so
do.
how is ONDC different from, say, Zepto or Amazon?
I think ONDC is a state-supported platform. I think ONDC is trying to be more like what is the app that you have in China? WeChat.
WeChat.
Yeah, it's trying to be a bit like that, where all service providers of all shapes and sizes can come onto one platform. And this is mainly designed for those people who don't want to interact or cannot afford to interact with Amazon. Because interacting with Amazon entails a certain cost, right? Certain markups, certain compliances with the internal Amazon systems. So ONDC is to ensure a marketplace. Think of it more like a Agora. You know what
I
Agora
haven't
is?
used Agora, but
Pardon me?
I haven't used Agora.
No.
Is it like
No. Agora was Agoras were marketplaces in the in ancient Greece.
okay? So I thought the Agora, the app which is there right now.
No. Marketplaces in ancient Greece, where basically every week people will go and sell all their wares and all. This is
So
before.
it's ONDC doesn't take care of the delivery.
It
Like,
does.
when
It does. It basically it's plugged in different layers. So you have the identity layer, you have the payment layer, which is UPI and other payment rails. You also have a delivery layer. So different delivery partners who want to. How it's supposed to be is, again, I've not uploaded a product onto ONDC, but the idea of ONDC is this, that you create a product. You should be able to go on to ONDC, verify yourself or your institution, your SME, whatever you are representing, and create a page and upload. Think of it like Shopify. Okay, you upload your product. Anybody in the world can see. I mean, whoever in India wants to buy it will buy the product. They will use. Now, you don't need to have a contract with Razorpay on your own website, correct, to sell this product. You do it on ONDC itself. So then there's an entire payment solution layer to it. So money comes to you, and then you can choose them. Various delivery partners can also be onboarded. Delivery, DTDC, whoever you want to deliver through, right? So you click one of them, and automatically the whole workflow then gets triggered. So the idea is an end-to-end solution without you being trapped or locked into any one service provider for any one activity. That's what they're trying to do. So every activity gets thin sliced.
how does the delivery take part of it? The delivery part of it, how is it managed?
I think there will be third-party delivery service providers. So just like let's say I am selling gamusas. Okay, I am the Gamusa Corp of Assam, and as the Gamusa Corp of Assam, I have opened a page and I want to sell gamusas. Similarly, there will be DTDC. DTDC will also have his own page, right? So just like I'm selling a gamusa, he's selling a delivery service. So I will either purchase his delivery service or linking to my service. It may also be such that the person who's buying my gamusa will be able to choose which delivery service he wants so that he can match and mix and match his delivery prices, and he's not locked into my price. So this is basically, think of it like this. If I order something on Amazon, you have no choice who is going to deliver the product for you, right? Amazon has its own delivery software, own delivery solutions, and you have to use that because Amazon is vertically integrated everybody. ONDC will horizontally integrate it.
So you can also choose who is delivering to you, and
That's
that
the
can be at
idea.
a competitive price.
That's the idea. I have not done this delivery thing myself, but this is what I've read about the ONDC workflow.
Let's try it out. It's live, right?
It should be live, yes.
Okay, but yeah, let us record a special video on us trying it out. I'll put it as a
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah. Let's see what we can buy on ONDC. What works,
Can we
what
sell
doesn't work.
digital also?
I'm
Can we
not
sell
sure.
digital?
I'm not
Okay,
sure. But I
that's
would say
also
that
good
we
fun.
should be able to sell digital assets. Why should we not? If you're taxing me
Yeah.
for it, let me sell it. You collect the tax. Who's
So-
complaining?
This is the official website .org.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
This is a Section 8 company.
What does that mean?
Section 8s are, think of it like a society but in a company format. So it's a company regulated as a full-fledged, by the ROC, Regulator or Registrar of Companies. So that's the most gold standard of organizational regulations that you can get. Section 8 is used for all charitable purposes, not for profit. So a Section 8 company is not allowed to give profit share to its shareholders. And it may also be able to exist without shareholders and just a advisory committee.
So it's in total interest of the people.
Public, yeah. So this is a design. See, when the government sets up a Section 8, then you know that it cannot make a profit out of it. So a lot of these... Yeah. Continue.
You took an example of WeChat, right?
Yeah.
But it's different from WeChat, right?
Of course.
Because whenever I'm in a discussion, I want to name products that are originally made in India. But then we have to give example of WeChat when we talk about UPI or ONDC. Is that true or false?
Partly true. I'll tell you why. Because China has centralized innovation in a certain sense, right? Like I'll give you an example of my own profession, law. If today I want to make a legal tech AI solution, right? I have to collect all the data from all the sources, from judgments, from books, from, statutes. I have to do that entire data collection. And then I have to train my AI models on it. And then I'll get some sort of a application that somebody may be able to use. China has actually already done all of this because they already have all this data in one place, right? So centralized data is an AI system or AI developer's dream. So it becomes very easy when all the data is segregated in one place. Whereas India has taken the line that we will not centralize our data. We will distribute our data.
Source.
Yeah, which is maybe not so good for AI people, but fundamental rights, basic cybersecurity, influence of the state on your personal life, all these things then get controlled through this architecture itself.
But if it is there, no. Centralized is like you're getting it from one place, but if it's on blockchain, even then you're getting it, it's online.
But they're in different data silos.
So you need different access.
Matlab, you will have to go to 50 places to get the data. You will have to have 50 transactions, which makes it difficult for you to spy on somebody or create a profile on somebody. Right? As opposed to going to one place and having a dashboard come up with all the beautiful graphics of what this person is up. This is his photograph. This is where he currently is. This is what he bought last time. These are his 4 girlfriends. This is his mistress. Everything will come out in These are his chat histories. He has all these accounts. It's in
Oh
one
my
beautiful dashboard, right? And all of this gets collated into a social score in China. If the camera sees you crossing the road when there's a red light, minus mark for you.
Oh,
Correct?
they're marking citizens.
Yeah,
And that might affect their loan getting or whatever thing they
everything.
want to do.
Whether they can get onto flights, whether they can leave their state, whether they can buy a first class or a second class bus ticket, right?
Oh my God.
All of it gets dictated by that. So there is this concept in China where many people have essentially been denied their rights, so they've literally been made homeless. They're not, so landlords are not allowed to lease properties to people who have less than a certain amount of score. So banta jayega kahan? So they're homeless.
So there is no second chance.
I mean, I don't know. I am not in
You're
China.
doomed forever.
I mean, I think that's the fear that they want their citizens to have.
I'm
That-
keen to know if that has increased or reduced the crimes.
Reduced. 100% reduced.
But it's China now. How can you rely on the data?
Because conceptually, Delhi has had the same experience. Okay.
Okay.
When Delhi released, I think Delhi was doing some experimentation with AI driven CCTV cameras. And I think Delhi was able to find a bunch of kidnapped children and homeless children that they would not have done earlier. So there's no doubt that if you use AI, you can reduce crime substantially. But then that goes at that you give up a lot of your privacy and a lot of your civil liberties. So it's the push and pull. Nothing in life comes for free. So what are you willing to give up to get what?
My next question is very profound.
Oh, love them, huh?
So why do lawyers have books in the background and you don't?
Oh, well, the correct answer is that most things have now turned digital. And well, if I pan my screen, you will see that I do have books over here and I have books over here. It's just this spot does not have books. Fortunately, unfortunately, law is a practice that requires you to read a lot. And there is really no two ways about it. And knowledge legal knowledge is such that it is very fractal in nature. You will start with one book, then that book will refer to a second book, so you'll put the second book on top of the first book. Then the second book will refer to the third book, so the third book is now put on top of the second book. So suddenly you'll be left with a pile of books all opened onto each other. And that is traditionally how we used to do a lot of our research, right? Because law is very cross-referenced. And you have to physically find the books to see where references are being made to each other. And then you take your notes and you come up with an opinion of one way or the other. So, yeah, very difficult to operate without books in this profession. And in fact, I am part of the Control F generation. So when I joined my profession in 2009, research was still expected to happen in this workflow. You first identify कौन सा कानून का किताब खोलना है, उस कानून का किताब खोलो. Then you go and open a commentary, which deals with the various, it deals with all the judgments that are under that particular law. Then you will identify the different citations of books. Then you go and pull out those books and then read the judgments from top to bottom to see exactly which one is relevant and which one is not. Okay. This was the traditional workflow of how lawyers have worked for, I would say, centuries to some extent. Okay. Then when I joined, we had this thing called Indian Kanun, right? That was one of the first free open source kind of open websites that had all judgments in it. And then I could just go and look for that particular topic by putting in a search query. It's like Google, but for judgments, right? And, inverted commas, where you have your little search strings you put in and all the relevant judgments comes, you filter it by latest decision. And then you do Control F, Control F, Control F, Control F, right? So which means that you actually don't read the judgment. You don't really get a great grasp of the law, but you can arrive at relevant judgments very quickly if you become skilled at this task. So in the beginning, I got a lot of flack. They're like, this is no way to research. And rightly so. But when judgments are required in 3 minutes, I can get it for you, right? And today, I have a different version where my juniors are relying on AI tools to give me my research. And I'm like, this is no way to research. So the cycle goes full, life goes full cycle. But I'm also seeing how AI is coming into this field in a big way. So these books will disappear very soon if AI has its way. Yeah.
And that AI needs to be on the blockchain because you cannot tamper with the judgments.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think training data will ever go onto the blockchain. Uh, I think some hash of the training data may go onto the blockchain. So that may happen. There may be other architectures that do this, but I'm not seeing blockchain and training data mixing just yet.
Not training data, but the books and the judgments and all the record of the laws.
ये सारा public है, and there is technically it can go onto the blockchain. I don't think there's no reason for it not to be on the blockchain, because today when judgments are passed, they come with a QR code. So earlier there'll be a physical stamp of the department, right? But now it comes with a QR code. And this is true for all government documents. They're moving towards a QR code regime. So when you scan that QR code, it can take you to the blockchain to say that, yes, this is a legitimate judgment passed by this judge, signed on this date. Absolutely correct.
So the third selling point of Web3 and blockchain was it's tamper-proof. Nobody can tamper it. It's everywhere. It's recorded. There are many ledgers who are doing the recording. But the government already does a good job at it, right? Have you seen any tampering in the government documents? Or how would you compare the tampering USP of blockchain versus what government is providing open source and storing?
I think they're solving different problems. The government is dealing with those solutions that may not require 100% immutability. In fact, for government things, you may want less immutability. So let me give you an example. I told you how land records are now being digitized and put on the blockchain, right? Now, if there is a naughty land revenue officer who decides to put wrong information, instead of my name, he writes his cousin's name in a land record, goes onto the blockchain, right? Tomorrow I'm in trouble because now there's this blockchain document and a token without my name on it. So I will definitely need it to be mutable so that I can make a complaint and get the blockchain changed and not be stuck with a record that cannot be rewritten, right? And fortunately for me, I will know who signed it. So I can catch exactly the person who's responsible for this mess up, right? For this, let's say, wrong in data entry. So that is why I think government solutions will not have immutable blockchains to a great degree. Whereas if you are now owning a digital asset, the more valuable the digital asset, the more immutable the blockchain you want it to be on. Right? That's I think how the cookie is going to crumble. So for example, if your transactions are not very high value, then you may just simply use a layer 2 blockchain. Public layer 2 blockchain. But if it's a very high value, then you'll do it on the layer 1. So it's a bit like that. So it's a spectrum all the way up, how secure you want your transaction to be, because again, blockchain is not a monolith. It's not like one blockchain, one immutability. So it's in grades. But the fact is that now you have access to different grades of immutability. That's, I think, the key takeaway from this. Because earlier you did. So now you can be like, I want to own this. How strongly do I want to own it? Right?
What if the value of a layer 2 asset becomes skyrocketed and then you have to move it on the layer 1?
I mean, then I'll move it onto the layer 1. What will I do? So that's the dream, right?
That gives the scope for the startup companies who are working on interoperability.
Yeah, absolutely.
Blockchains.
There's a lot of innovation that still has to take place in that field. Because I think, as I said, the interface problem. So crypto today still hasn't solved this interface problem. And I think the solution is going to come from the protocol layer, the protocol level. And Ethereum is already building it in. I think others are also doing it. They're doing this thing called account abstraction, where with a simple username, password, or just a maybe email ID also, you will be able to go and own a smart contract. As opposed to owning tokens, you own a smart contract. And the smart contract, in normal language, you can tell it, ki these are the tokens, you please go and buy, you do this, you do that. So the smart contract becomes like an agent for you. And smart contract will then open your wallets. The smart contract will do your transactions without you having to do. So that, I think, is going to be the way how people will actually overcome the interface problem. So that everybody tomorrow who wants to deal with crypto will then simply open a smart contract for themselves and not have to go through the whole rigors of starting an entire.
That would be a very ideal place to reach to, right? Because that is the friction that keeps the regular people
away
from onboarding.
Absolutely
blockchain.
true. And you see, it's so from what I understand, the account abstraction ERC is already been approved by the Ethereum folks, and I think it is going to be pushed out in one of the upgrades that now come. There's, I think, DCAN that's coming. I'm not exactly sure, but in one of them, it's supposed to actually be pushed out. And when that happens, you will see a lot of benefits coming from this space. And it's not the only one, right? Like, for example, they are going to have there's a whole suite. You are going to have NFT 2.0 now. So there are dynamic
NFT 2.0.
Ah.
What is NFT 2.0?
So dynamic NFTs. Okay. So NFTs that can be reversible, that can be rented, that can be time bound. So point being that today NFTs are very static. You buy it and you sit on it. Can't do much, right? We also believe that the NFT should not change because we're only using NFT for, it's the Bitcoin effect. When you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, it is only used for money purposes. But blockchain can be used for so much more than money, right? So similarly, the original NFT protocols, 1155 and 721, they were used only for static NFT purposes, like high value art and this and that, stuff like that. Not things that move or require to change or very, accessible to smart contracts. That was not. So now you are going to get dynamic NFTs. It's already happening to a great degree. And dynamic NFTs will be able to have a lot more functionality in them. So you will have NFTs that can hold not just one file, but multiple files. So if you open an NFT on a video player, you'll see a video. If you open it in an audio player, you'll hear audio. If you open it in a photo editor, you'll see a photo. Right? So NFT with multiple documents or files in them. Then you will be able to, there's a protocol amendment coming, addition coming for Emote. There's the Emote protocol upgrade, which means that you'll be able to like the NFT itself.
Like in social media.
Yes. Today you've liked something on Instagram. It's gone that like. It's only on an Instagram server, right? But tomorrow, if you like an NFT, not like the NFT on OpenSea, which is again in the OpenSea server, but like the NFT itself, it's literally,
on the blockchain.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of going up to a physical painting and sticking something on it and saying, I like it. Okay. And then you can, dynamic NFTs can say that if this NFT receives 150 likes, please transfer it to Tanmay. Please change the color of this. Right? So these little subtle things are coming in. Then there are amendments that are happening with regard to, actually I made a chart out of this. Will you give me a second to open my chart?
Absolutely.
I'll just take you through it very quickly.
Digital chart, no? You can share it on screen.
I can share it on the screen also. Just give me a second. I have it on this thing called Miro. Miro. It's an online whiteboard for visual collaboration. Okay. Yeah. So how do I now share my screen?
There's a button in the bottom center.
Share screen. There we go. Yeah. Can you see this?
Yes.
Right. So these are essentially different standards that have now become ERCs. ERC means that it has gone through the acceptance protocol and they will now be made part of the main Ethereum protocol. So and I've tagged them to different standard. So 721 is the standard, 111, 1155 is the standard, and ERC20 obviously is the most famous standard. So if you can see over here, they're making one for royalty standards. That means that you can have the royalty inbuilt into the protocol layer itself. You will have tokenized walls. You will have refundable tokens, adds refund functionality to all the other tokens that are there, right? Then you will have things called multiverse NFTs, a universal representation of multiple related NFTs as a single digital asset across various platforms. Shareable non-fungible tokens, so which means that you can take a NFT and share it with multiple people, like you share a photograph, right? But you'll still know where that exact data has come from and who is sharing it. So this may be something that's very interesting for data training or for marketing and publicity, because you want to know whether Adidas is actually making an offer or not. And if that offer comes to you in the form of a shareable NFT, right? So that will be quite some interesting thing. And this also allows multiple people to own an NFT. Like this guy over here, hierarchical domains, extremely generic name resolution. Many, like one NFT will be nestled within many other NFTs, right? So NFTs can have babies and those babies can have more babies.
Minus.
Potentially. Web3 URL to EVM call message translation. So this is basically like you will get a website type functionality for NFTs. So a special URL for Web3 will come. Then you have this parent governed non-fungible token nesting, an interface for non-fungible tokens nesting with emphasis on parent token control over the ownership. So let's say you want to have a piece of art and there are different derivative artworks coming from that piece of art. So this protocol will be the one that you will use for that.
Yeah, there's so many derivative competition that is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
It's good for it.
So, I mean, as you can see, like there's even a protocol for trading NFTs. So you don't need an OpenSea, or rather OpenSea will then adopt this 6105 protocol, right? So these are all different upgrades. Like this is a very interesting one, soul-bound tokens. So this is a token that you cannot transfer from your wallet. Imagine that, right? So this is very good for identity purposes. Or if you're a gamer and this is your gamer tag, then you want to keep your gamer tag with yourself, and you don't want the game wants to ensure that you are the owner of all these NFTs, then it'll make sure that you can't transfer the NFT out of your wallet. So, I mean, I'm just now not going to go into all of these, but yeah, I think you get the idea that there's a whole bunch of functionalities that are coming up in the NFT space that will give you
Absolutely.
NFT Web 2.0.
That makes it more exciting for the future, right? There are a lot of
Yes.
developments happening
It is happening in the back end.
non-popularly, where all the influencers have gone to talk about AI, blockchain, and developers and the Web3 guys are still working hard on
Yeah,
to come out with many more amazing things in
absolutely.
a very short while. Tell me about you. You showed us a painting in the background. What is the history of you, your family with art?
My family does not have much of a history with art, even though I think my dad painted, my mother painted, but that is, I think, at the amateur level. They did not take it professional. I am also myself an amateur painter. I have made many artworks over the course of my life. I think more than 150, 200 pieces I must have painted that I have retained with myself. Many I have thrown away. And I never associated myself or identified myself as an artist, but it is something I have found myself becoming. And the greatest support I got in my journey was from Colors of India. And when I met Angad, in fact, Angad was very instrumental in my art journey. Because I think Angad is also the reason we got connected, right, Tanmay? Yeah, so...
Yes.
so...
Agat is a great man.
Yeah. So just to, give him some credit here, I was doing an internship in Chandigarh at one point of time. And I landed up at Angad's house. Angad was not there, but there was a painting that he was working on an easel. And I saw that painting and I got mighty inspired. And I said, you know what? I'm also going to start painting. And Angad was at that...
a spiritual warrior?
No. I'm talking 2006.
Oh.
Okay. So far back, Angad was also, at that time, it was a yellow painting and he was working with, I think, oil paints and not like the regular expensive oil paints. It was like one of the deluxe enamel paint type situation. He had this big box of paint over there. And I never in my wildest dreams thought that I could do enamel paint paintings. And that's actually how I went back. I said, ye to sasti cheez hai. I went to the hardware store, bought a paintbrush, bought those little cans of paint, and I started painting. And my painting career started with that. And then I sold a bunch in college, selling here and there, but never really minted too many of them and didn't get into the NFT game. But that is a thing that I absolutely intend to do sooner than later. So yeah, that's my story. I have been a lawyer for 15 years. I grew up in first 9 years in Assam, next 9 years in Rajasthan in Ajmer, where I did my schooling, Mayo College. Then I was 5 years in Pune, that's Symbiosis, where I did my law school. Then another 10 years in Delhi, and now 5 years in Guwahati. So that has been my journey where I think quite many jurisdictions covered, many people met, many languages spoken. Yeah.
How many languages you speak?
I speak Assamese, Hindi, English. I think there are 3. They tried
So
to teach
Assamese
me.
is your mother tongue.
Yes. They tried to teach me German and Punjabi, but that has not happened.
And you also speak Python, I guess, C++.
No, I don't code. No coding languages, unfortunately.
And the legal language. How
That
can you forget
I
that?
speak legalese. Absolutely. That's my favorite
Legalese.
language. Walks and talks like English, but not quite.
Okay, so insult somebody in legalese.
Oh, I will never do that. Legalese is... how would I insult somebody in legalese? I would say, Your Honor, maybe in a notice, I would say something like, maybe your clients have not fully acquainted you to the entire factual conspectus at play here. Which is a way of saying that you don't know shit.
They're stupid.
Yeah. Or we say that this statement is denied, which means that, I don't agree with what this guy is saying. Or you say this statement...
Bhavini deta
But then you say this statement is vehemently denied. Then you're like, oh, vehemently banda deny kar raha hai. Must be really wrong. Nobody cares. Legalese is designed to not be read by too many people. Least of all the lay people.
Okay,
So yeah.
how would you appreciate somebody? Like तारीफ करनी है किसी की.
That in court, I would say, Your Honor, my colleague here makes an excellent point. That's about it. There's not much more than that tarif I'm going to do.
Legalese doesn't appreciate appreciation. It only has.
You say yes or you say no. Because, I mean, there is this concept in court where many times you can get into a intellectual discussion. Right?
Oh, in the court.
In the court. Because whenever as an advocate, when I represent somebody in court, I'm not expected to be wasting the court's time. There's no opportunity for riffraff, extra words, get to the point right now. That's kind of the vibe, right? And lawyering, appearing in court is the most extreme form of public speaking. That's my view, right?
Extreme.
It's extreme, right? Because see, you have an audience at the back. We call it a gallery. All the lawyers sitting behind you. They're usually disinterested in what you're saying unless and until you start making a fool of yourself. Then you start hearing the sniggers. Your reputation meter will start coming down. Somebody may also come up to you and say, Chhod de beta, tere se nahi hoga ye. Tell the judge this. You're on the wrong side of things. And then you have to be like, am I saying the right thing? Self-doubt. All those things happen, right? Second, you literally have an opposition to one side of you, whose whole job is to dislodge you. Your Honor, he's not stating the truth. He's misconceived. This is a wrong statement. He's completely bogus. The application of law is wrong. 1,000 things will come. When you're in the flow of arguments, you'll stand up and say something silly just to disrupt you. Right? That's a proper job of opposing lawyers. So, good lawyers will not interrupt each other unless they do it strategically. Right? And then, if that's not enough, you also have a judge literally sitting there and judging you. Making faces.
Yeah, people talk about judging on social media. There's a judge literally judging you.
Yeah. What else? ठीक है. तो तुम्हें जज बेचारा जज कर रहा है. He's like, no, counsel, why are you saying this? No, come to the point. आपके केस में एक weakness है, ठीक है? And फिर वो उस weakness को ना zero in करना शुरू करता है. Starts like, screwing in on it, zoning in on it. And then you were like, no, Your Honor, may please come to this document first and let me come to that document first. Like, no, counsel, come to this point. So you will see your opposite side also nodding along like that. Yes. He'll put his table down, फुसफुसाएगा वो अपने juniors के साथ. Because it's also a lot of theater, right? A lot of theater goes into this. There's a script, but the script is, let's call it extempore. Improv. It's like an improv theater with some script. So, and if that is not, and this is usually the life of a practicing advocate, he has to deal with all these three sides. But now, as if that is not enough, we also have a computer in front of us with a camera pointed right at us. Okay. Which means that this court proceeding is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube and for the world to see for posterity. So now there's a new genre of content where people go to these court hearings and pick out good and funny and bad arguments. Right?
It's a tip for content creators.
Yes,
if you're not finding content, go to these websites.
Yeah. YouTube, all of Guwahati High Court, Kerala High Court, Karnataka High Court, you will all find on YouTube.
So only high courts do this, or even the district courts?
District courts don't. So high courts are courts of record. So the proceedings are meant to be recorded. That's the requirement of the law. District courts are not court or record. What that means is that one district judge's order, and district court is also in layers. Okay, so I'm just calling all of them a district court. So a district court's judgment is, you cannot rely on it for another case. It has no precedentiary value. You can't be like, उस judge ने ये बोला तो आप ये करो. नहीं. High court, you can do that. You can show a high court judge a judgment to a district court judge, or you can show a two-judge judgment, a judgment passed by two judges, which we call a division bench. So division bench judgment can be shown to a single bench judge, right? So there's a hierarchy. But these judgments are then recorded and they will also be published in books. Okay, which we will have to, my juniors are meant to look into.
That's then the more books get added to the library.
Yes. 16 volumes keep coming. Fortunately, we don't have to do that, by the way. Like today, I get a SCC subscription. That's a software for judgments. So every judgment is uploaded live on that. And I probably paid some 40,000 rupees per year for this, right? For 2 seats or something like that. Back in the day, you had to buy physical books. Means rack banao, office space banao, वो physical book को वहाँ पे डालो और उसको आप control F भी.
Tell us a memory from your experience, which was the hi yaar, ये तो मजा आ गया इस time. Something like that. What is your favorite memory in your career?
Don't have one. I have. So any hearing that I have prepared for, like for 2-3 days I've prepared for and I'm nervous about. Not a walkover. But I'm like, yaar, isme to up and down ho sakta hai. Either I'm before a difficult judge, or I've got a difficult case, or I've got a difficult client. There's some difficulty somewhere, right? But the facts of the case are such that I find it interesting. I've gone deep into it because that law is a rabbit hole. Okay. And my boss once taught me that at some point you have to know when to stop digging. Otherwise you'll come out somewhere else and lose your thread. Okay. So that judgment is very important. So difficult case, I'm nervous about it. Then I go in for a hearing. Now once I go for a hearing, and I think this is a experience that is shared by many arguing lawyers, they feel a sense of flow. ठीक है, जितनी भी चीजें आपने पढ़ी है ना, वो सब फिर it comes together and it actually becomes an enjoyable process. And when the judge starts accepting your case, you get high. When the judge starts disrupting your case, you get focused and you start trying to think on your feet. So in cases where the judge is not fully convinced, right, and I get difficult questions, and then I'm able to back those difficult questions and change the judge's mind. So which means that when I see my opposing lawyers smile, become a frown, become like a bowed head, is when I get happy. So this happens, I would say, in a while. right? So I would say these opportunities come by in a month. If I can do 3-4 of these, I feel quite good at this stage in my career, and I'm hoping that more and more of these opportunities come. And these usually only happen in a final hearing, right? So once the case has gone through its entire motions and you have a final hearing, then you get to these moments. So we've started a lot of cases, so I know that in the next 2-3 years, many of these opportunities will keep coming for me, and that's how one builds a career also. So yeah, looking forward to this sensation.
That's good. I hope that's on record so you can like make it viral.
Yes. Yeah, it's actually like,
Dhrupad Das makes a statement and it goes viral.
the things to learn from Dhrupad Das. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed. Because for the first time, law has actually now become a spectator sport. Earlier, law was a closed door event. Only the people in that courtroom saw what you did. But today, there are some hearings that, 70,000 people have seen. Unheard of. From an educational standpoint, because if the topic is interesting, if the value of the court is high, the matter is high, people will watch. Not necessarily for entertainment value, but for knowledge value, right? And now you have many content creators who take a 3-hour hearing and condense it into maybe a 15-minute snippet. Very similar to yours. What do you say? Where the product launches take place by big tech companies, those annual days, it's long 3-hour thing, but ultimately these are the 10 top.
Stop.
Yeah. So that.
Top 10 takeaways.
Yeah, exactly. With little graphics happening and, a zoom in of the face at the right time. So that scope has opened up, right? So suddenly one of those videos can go viral. And a lawyer lawyer's not allowed to advertise, by the way, right? We are barred from soliciting. So I cannot go and, if I write an article, I cannot say, contact me. So if you ever go onto a lawyer's website, you'll always find a disclaimer saying, this is not solicitation. We are not asking you to come here. You're coming on your own accord, boss. Accept this and then only enter my website. Okay. So we are not allowed. We even restrictions on how big your signboard can be and all.
Oh.
Yeah. We are a noble profession, Tanmay. Okay. We are a legit noble profession, and nobility of this profession ensures that we cannot do certain things, which is like advertiser services. People have to come to us because of our own reputation.
You should create a law coin.
Law coin.
For the,
what will that coin do?
It will rank a nobility.
Oh, aristocrat level. No. In fact, in law, we already have a hierarchy. You have senior advocates and you have normal advocates. That's the hierarchy that you have in law. I don't think there is any more hierarchy. There are many people who are opposed to senior advocates, thinking that there should be no hierarchy in today's society because it's a holdover of a British system, right? There used to be Queen's Councils back in the day, which Britain still has. So senior advocates are some version of that. So anyway, these are things for a later discussion.
Yes, thank you so much. It was great fun talking to you and very insightful to know about the existing status of Web3 and what is going to come up in the future. You took us through many government protocols and what government is doing. They're doing so much more than what comes in the news. So that's very exciting in the way.
Yeah.
They are so tech-savvy government. That's pretty exciting in a way. It's not just like old things or old that government doesn't do. We get a wrong impression of the government by their websites, but no, they are very progressive
in the background. Policy framework. Work is happening.
Back end they're working on. Even the front end needs some help, but yeah, back end is strong. So thank you so much once again.
Absolutely. My pleasure, Tanmay. Thank you for having me. It was a great talk. Loved our discussion.
Any words for the audience? Final words for the audience.
Final words for the audience is that yes, Web3 is a space to watch out for. And please get technologically comfortable. There's a lot of tech that's going to come your way. Web3, AI, drones, edge computing, even analog computing is now going to become a thing. So lots of tech coming your way. So get familiar with the entire language of technology. It's going to be a survival skill going forward.
We need to record a video on analog computing because I run the history now. But yes, let's Google search that and create another video of that. Absolutely. One last question.
Yes.
How was your experience for today?
It's an excellent
I'm
experience,
going to use
Tanmay.
this as testimonial, okay?
Yeah.
So,
It's excellent experience. The setup process was beautiful from the moment I went onto your cal.com to the time that I logged into Riverside. All excellent, right? You're an excellent host uh, to the extent that you made me feel very comfortable, right? Which is a very important part for any host, and that gets me talking about things and thinking about things that I don't usually think about. Your checklist was quite an insightful checklist that you did before we went on, right? And obviously, the questions were so good that I think 2 hours, 18 minutes have passed, and I have not even felt it, right? And I hope the audience also don't feel the time passing and they can learn from this discussion of ours.
thank
Yeah,
you so much. Very
yeah,
kind.
of course. As are you, Tanmay. Sure.
Thank you for watching this conversation till the end. Please share this with at least one person because one conversation can change a life. And let us know in the comments what kind of future episodes you'd like to see, and let us know what questions or topics that you'd be interested in. Thanks. See you in the next episode.